Welcome to the Life's Best Medicine podcast, where we are finding hope and healing one episode at a time. No appointment needed, no rubber gloves, and no coping. Just a healthy dose of life lessons to help equip you for this wild journey we call life. Hey everyone, this is a friendly reminder that we are here for entertainment purposes only. We may not even be that entertaining at times, but this is not medical advice. Talk to your doctor, check with your healthcare professionals before making any lifestyle changes or medicine changes. What we're talking about is our clinical experience and what we've seen. And so if you really want our advice, you can consult us. You can actually consult me as a doctor, or you can consult my guest and get all your questions answered. But we can't give free medical advice because we can't pay our bills with that, but we can help to educate you a bit and allow you to think a little bit, and always reach out to your medical professional before making any lifestyle changes. Thank you. Hello, everyone. I want to thank my sponsors again, Keto Mojo and Health Code. They're doing some great stuff, both great companies. Very honored to be sponsored by them, and I'm thankful that they can bring us these great stories. It's February already. That means our New Year's resolutions are now, we're saying, do we really want to keep doing this? How are we going to stay on that track? So both of these companies will help us stay on track. Keto Mojo, of course, being able to check your ketones and glucose levels and make sure your diet is doing what it's supposed to be doing. A lot of people just finished their carnivore month, so it'll be fun to see what their labs look like and what their sugars are doing. And so Keto Mojo, keto-mojo.com, it's a valuable tool. I use them all the time to double check our continuous glucose monitors and to monitor ketone levels. I've been having a lot of fun with some friends lately, experimenting a bit with them and their lifestyle changes. And I do see that Jason Fung is correct. When people do a little bit of an extended fast, their ketones do go up. So it's been great to see that and getting people healthier. And also along that same path, we have our friends from Health Code, Get Health, GETHLTH.com. MetHealth is a discount code that we worked out for our listeners. Get a discount for the best nutrition around. They even have a vegan option and also a 20-year shelf life on their metal cases, vacuum sealed, for those of us who are doomsdayers and worried about the end days. So all you need is a little water in that, and that's all you got. You don't have to eat dehydrated, terrible food that's not even healthy for you. You might as well get some good health and enjoy your time if things go south. So thank you again, both my sponsors, and enjoy this episode. Hello and welcome back to the Life's Best Medicine podcast. I brought the lioness in, Sabine Hazan, doctor, researcher, GI doc. She does it all, deals with the FDA stuff or all the crazy stuff I don't want to deal with. But when I was looking for understanding the gut microbiome, I put it like Twitter. I go, Twitter friends, who's the best? And they go, oh, she's your person. And since then, not only knowing her stuff about that, she knows all the BS in the system too. So we always have a good time. So Doc, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Great to always speak with you, obviously, and definitely talk sh.t.
Yeah, we always get ourselves in trouble somehow, but first of all, explain to people what Biome is. Like, so people who've never heard of it, the gut, as a matter of fact, I think I told you before, I was giving a talk and I addressed the gut microbiome, and some doctor goes, you can't talk about that stuff. There's no science to that. You're going to lose credibility. I was like, well, just put it in and look for yourself, and it's amazing. Yes. It's amazing the crazy stuff that you're doing.
Yeah, and it's amazing how it's not reaching mainstream media, right? And how it's just every day I find discoveries. Like, when we looked at vitamin C increases bifidobacteria, that was the first study that actually showed vitamin C increasing bifidobacteria and possibly showing how it works in immunity, right? And never reached mainstream media. So but I love what I do. I love seeing, every day is Christmas. Biome was created. It's the name is from your genes. So progena, from your family gene to your microbiome, right? We always think that diseases comes from your genetics. Oh, well, I have heart disease in my family, therefore I'm going to have heart disease because it's genetically inherited, right? But what if it's not the genetics? What if it is actually the microbiome that you are inheriting? And it's the microbiome that you are inheriting from your mother, but then you are shared with your father and your brother, etc., right? So, and that was really the discovery, right? That was the beginning for me was, is it the genes, or is it the genes causing the problem, or is it the microbes that we're passing on, right? You see certain races or groups of people that have the same kinds of diseases, right? And you ask yourself, are they passing on the genes, or are they passing on the microbiomes? When you look at Jews, for example, with all these diseases, Crohn's, Tay-Sachs, etc., you have to ask yourself, is it genetic, or is it, they were in pogroms, they were in concentration camps, they were in environments that were, not really conducive to a great environment of microbes. Are they therefore passing on microbes that they accumulated in these pogroms and concentration camps and passed on to their kids the microbes that caused the disease? When we look at Tay-Sachs, when you look at Creutzfeldt-Jacobs, right, which is a virus, JCV, is that passed on from those environments in those people, right? And therefore, is that the reason they're getting that, right? I think
And is it the
also
major stressor that they were under too kills off the gut microbiome
a
too, right?
100%, 100%. So you're killing the bifidobacteria because you're under the stress. You're accumulating bad microbes. Somehow you're surviving, right? Because this is a resilience. It's a resilient microbiome, right? To me, the resilience, there's something to the resilience, right? Those people that don't have such a great microbiome, eat junk food like crazy, manage to live to like 100 years old, and you go, what? Same thing. I see my donors, right? I use stool donors. And some of these kids have the worst diet ever. They're eating like chips, French. One of my best donors actually eats French fries, nachos. I mean, and not even like good French fries from McDonald's, right? And I'm like, I look at that and I go, how? Why? And this kid is skinny. To me, that's a resilience, right? To me, that's like, hi, I can eat anything and I'm solid. I can go in a room with everybody having COVID and coughing, and I'm going to be coming out fine with nothing. So those are the people that I look for, right? So those are the people that really interest me. So to me, I think, when you have people, a community of people that live in those stressful environments and manage to survive those stressful environments, I think there's something to their microbiome that is so resilient that it'll allow them to survive. But then I think they do pass on those microbes. So that was really the basis of Progenobiome. Is it microbes causing the problem, or is it genetics? Or is it the environment, right?
Or is it
And
all of these things thrown in, right?
or is it all of it
And
together?
so the question
So,
becomes like a lot of people, you're just genetically going to be obese. You're genetically going to get diabetes. Like, okay, if I'm born with a bad microbiome, can I do something about it? And I think that's where a lot of us practitioners get overwhelmed because we'll do a GI map and you're like, okay, this one's high, this one's low, this one's medium, this one's very low. And you go, okay, what does this mean? Like, what do I do with this information?
and here's the problem, right? So GI map is a PCR test. It's a piece of the microbe. So the fact that they're seeing that piece of the microbe doesn't really tell you the story, because it's just a piece of the microbe. Now, is that piece of the microbe high because they're rejecting the bug? They're getting rid of it, and therefore it doesn't really mean anything because they're getting rid of it, right? Is that piece of the microbe correlating with what's really in their gut? Remember, the microbiome is different in every region of the bowels, right? The duodenum is different than the jejunum, than the microbiome in the jejunum, different than the microbiome in the cecum, different in the microbiome in the transverse colon, different than in the sigmoid, different in the rectum. So every areas of the colon. So when you're testing a stool sample that just came out of your toilet, it's really the waste, right? So you kind of have to like say, is this the waste? And therefore, do I really even care about that? Or is it,
Is
correlating
it a
to,
reflection of what's
is it
actually
a
there, the percentages
reflection?
and all that?
exactly of what's in there, what should be in there, right? So I think, that's the fascinating thing. So GI map, you're right. It doesn't really tell you anything. Even me, when I do these genetic testing, and remember, we're doing research, right? When I hired my scientists, because what was happening is a lot of labs came out with this, right? Well, get tested your microbiome, you'll figure out your life, your disease, what you can eat, what kind of food. First of all, there's no such thing, okay? If you want to know what kind of food you're eating, ask your grandma and your grandparents and your parents, okay?
Well,
Because
won't your microbiome change based on what you're eating? Right. So if you're carnivore, you're going to have a different microbiome than someone who's eating a vegan diet,
vegetarian,
maybe, or
yes,
someone who's
yes.
eating, Cheetos every day.
But if you stay pretty stable, like you're eating Cheetos every day, then your microbiome shouldn't really change unless you're drinking a bunch of alcohol or taking some antibiotics or etc. So I think, when you look at the microbiome in communities, when you look at the differences in the people in the communities, it's fascinating to see how we're all different. What's even more fascinating to see is how we're all different, but we're similar in families. Like I always show my family portrait, and you'll see my husband and I have been married 30 years. We're very similar. We're kissing, we're hugging, we're eating
Still,
the
after all these
same.
years?
Still 30 years, yeah.
Wow. I'm
But,
doing it too,
but
so I guess I'm all right. All right.
all
Wow.
right, you kiss your husband, you laugh with your husband, you're fine. So, we share the same microbes. We're kind of yin and yang, right? So when I'm up, and it's so funny because like we are showing at the anxiety association meeting, we're showing a signature microbiome of anxiety. So now we're going to have a fingerprint of people that have anxiety. We're going to be able to tell it from the stools. Isn't that cool? So imagine you have, and by the way, COVID opened that door for me because if you'll remember, everybody with COVID was anxious. So we started noticing, certain microbe that went up, and then certain groups of microbes that went down. And we said, well, you know what? Let's start giving questionnaires to people, right? GAD questionnaires, I like to call them. So anxiety questionnaires. So I gave anxiety questionnaires to my patients. And next thing you know, I'm noticing the people that had a high anxiety had a lot of this group of microbes. And the people that had low anxiety didn't have so much of that microbe, which kind of said, because I'm working with Sasha Bistritsky, who's like the top psychiatrist at UCLA. And I said, maybe we have something. So we presented it and it got accepted to be presented as a poster. So it's exciting because for the first time, people are going to say, hey, anxiety may be a microbe, right? So
But do you think it's, again, there's the chicken and the egg? Is it be anxious people they screw up their microbiome? Or is it the people with the anxiety microbiome get anxiety?
chicken or the egg, it's the same thing
But
tonight.
you see it. It's a correlate. Like you see it and you go, okay, anxious people have this pattern.
Yeah, and actually, I gave a lecture. I was giving a lecture to a bunch of doctors and scientists in Zurich over Zoom this afternoon. And one of the physicians who's done a microbiology background, who has a microbiology background, said to me, "Well, your vaccine data, because we've showed the vaccines affect the microbiome." He said, "Well, your vaccine data could be flawed because maybe bifidobacteria appeared because of inflammation. Maybe inflammation killed the bifidobacteria, right? And instead of, the loss of bifidobacteria causing the inflammation, right? So this is again chicken or the egg, right? Which one is it?
Well, let's take a step back. Let's just look. It's like, okay, if you ask Peter McCullough, all of our friends that we talked to, it's like, okay, who's gonna die of COVID? It was like, oh, the metabolically sick. Like the obese diabetics are the ones who predominantly, because they were getting this massive inflammatory response. So was it because their immune response in their gut was so delayed that all of a sudden it goes, oh crap, now we gotta throw the kitchen sink at everything,
100%.
right? But if you get this little thing and your body goes, just get rid of that, it's done, right?
100%. So that's what happened to me at the beginning. I started like dividing my patients into groups, and I started thinking, what do I think the bifidobacteria level of this person is, right? So what I would do is like an overweight patient, I assume they had zero bifidobacteria. So I'm like, this patient doesn't have any immunity in their gut. They're basically sitting duck. So I got to be very aggressive from day one. So I got to give it a drug like hydroxy and Z-Pak to kill the virus quickly. And then I got to give vitamin C, D, and zinc and ivermectin to increase the microbiome, to increase that bifidobacteria, to essentially flush out the virus and decrease the cytokine storm, right? Because the cytokines were all over the lungs. The key is to, through circulation, to basically grab all those cytokines that are in your gut, flush them out, leave room for the ones in the lungs to kind of go into the gut via the blood circulation. So that was my way of treating. And then of course a young person, a baby, I didn't really do much. I gave them vitamins because I'm like, you have bifidobacteria in there. Why would I want to kill bifidobacteria by giving you, Z-Pak and hydroxychloroquine? Let's forget that, leave that to the sick people. Let's give the vitamin C. Let's give the ivermectin if they were really bad. Let's give the doxycycline. Because the problem is you have to remember, we do develop a resistance, right? So the more you give these drugs early on, the more you're aggressive. It's like I have a headache and I'm taking codeine for it. You're going to want to have that codeine, and then you start building up a tolerance for it. And then eventually you're like, well, I need stronger and I need stronger. And then you nothing really stops that headache. So I think we have to be cautious on how we treat. I think the mistake we've made, in the past is, and probably still make, is we treat too much. We're too aggressive with antibiotics. We're too aggressive with pain medications. Patient is suffering. We don't like them suffering. So we're like, here's like 20 prescriptions. But here's what happens. You don't develop that, resilience, that tolerance for pain.
Well,
Pain.
and I've looked at that too. There's data on like, looking at obesity rates, right, as we get older, or diabetes rates, because that's been my area of looking. And you go, oh, if someone took a bunch of, even if they had a great childhood and everything else was great, if they took a bunch of antibiotics for ear infections, sinus infections as a kid, or asthma, and all of a sudden they gain all this weight. No one else in their family is obese, but they are. So this microbiome has to have something to do with that. Or
Yeah,
breastfed versus
absolutely.
non-breastfed, and vaginal versus
Absolutely.
C-section, right?
I think so. I mean, so that's why I stepped into it. To me, it was fascinating to see, the differences. It was fascinating to see, how families are similar, how everybody is different, how people in Africa have a different microbiome than people in Singapore, than people in Malaysia. Even in the animal kingdom, you probably don't know this about me, but I go on outings and I collect, poop samples from like the giraffe in Africa to the monkey in Gibraltar to the camel in Morocco to the cow in Virginia. Brooke Miller, Dr. Miller, you know him. He has a farm in Virginia. So I was speaking at one of his events, and I took it upon myself to collect stools there. So it's important to see the microbiome not only of humans but also of the animals. I collected stools of my daughter's cat with my daughter. Come to find out, my daughter's cat had the same level of bifidobacteria as my daughter. 15% BIF, 15%. So it's fascinating. Even animals, that kind of share these microbes with humans. So yeah, the whole thing, looking at the planet and then looking at the soil, that's another interest of mine, to see why is the soil so rich here that gives so many fruits and another one doesn't give anything. So,
Well, and
it's
don't
all
you
about
think too
microbes.
that you get a more diverse, or for instance, my kids, they played in the dirt, they did all this crazy stuff. They never get sick, they never have allergies. My brother would like clean everything, put alcohol on all, wherever you went, and their kids always have allergies and they're sick. Do you think there's something to that if you're not exposed to things at a young age?
100%. My
Yeah.
mom was like that with me, and I was like that with my oldest child. Super sterile. Like I was like boiling all the bottles before she drank, and boiled all the little, nipples and everything. And my oldest one would get a lot of ear infections and would get sick a lot. And my youngest one, I just let her eat from the floor. I was like, fine, eat this. And my youngest one is like a carnivore. And it's so funny because my oldest one is a vegan vegetarian, and my youngest one is a total carnivore. So it's interesting that pattern. And by the way, I was craving the foods. I was craving vegetables for my oldest one, and I was craving meat for the youngest one, and junk food for my youngest one. So it is interesting that, those microbes that do get passed on, those spores that probably get passed on from mother to child. And yes, C-section, you know, so it makes a big difference. But I think, yes, sterility, I think there's a place for sterile environment. Obviously, you can live in a sterile environment, you can have a sterile gut. But the problem is when you go from sterile to microbiome diversity, your body doesn't know how to respond to that. And it gets sick because it's not used to all these microbes.
Yeah, it's
So
even within countries. Like, oh, I'm in Guatemala. People in the southern areas, they go, I get sick if I drink the northern water, but my water, I
yes,
think they get messed up if they go to different regions, right?
100%. And you'll go to Mexico and you drink their water, you'll get giardia. They're drinking their water, they're perfectly fine because their microbiome has accommodated to that.
Yeah,
So
and I've seen some crazy stuff, and I don't know if I mentioned it to you, but I had this kid I saw in Guatemala one year, and he was skinny and had asthma and had snot all over him, and like rashes, and he was in the middle of the jungle. I'm like, how's this kid? What's he being exposed to that's making him allergic? And the standard there is you give them, some ivermectin, or you give them a one pill of some kind of, anti microbe. And for a year, they're fine. And then I saw the kid a year later, he gained a bunch of weight. He's the captain of the soccer team, feeling healthy. Allergies gone, asthma's gone, everything's better. I'm asking the doctor, how's this guy better? How's he so much better? What did he do? And he goes, oh, you gave him you kill off his parasite.
yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
wow, it's
But
crazy.
parasites enter because there's a gut dysbiosis, right?
Mm.
You kind of like you have that imbalance. So yeah, no, it is crazy. All it takes is one bad bug to come in and start multiplying and start its own process of disease, I think. So,
So
and
like
that's
looking
what we
from
end up
my
finding out.
from our perspective, we're looking like, okay, like the kid you were talking about with the French fries. Yeah, when he's young, he's eating French fries and Coke and all this stuff's happening, and he doesn't gain weight. Then he gets to be 40 and gains all this weight all of a sudden. So is it the change of the gut microbiome, or is it insulin resistance where their insulin levels are going up, making them store fat, and they're more stressed, and they got to deal with kids and grandkids and life and all that
Yeah,
stuff?
I think that's probably what happens. I think, as you get older, so you're eating the French fries, you're young, you're healthy, your microbiome is amazing. But then as you get older, you start you're drinking a couple of alcohol glasses, you're having the stress of the kids, paying the mortgage, bills, all that kind of piles up. And I think that kills your BIF even more. And then I think that's when the imbalances occur. So then it becomes you've got a dysbiosis, and then of course you've not trained yourself to eat a regular diet. You're eating junk food your whole life. So now that junk food becomes your weight, essentially. That's what I think happens. So
And so getting like one thing is interesting. I've heard, ivermectin as an example. You've shown data that ivermectin is going to help protect your bifidobacterium or increase, which is your immune response
within 24 hours, yes.
within 24 hours. Okay.
Yes.
So
So
a lot of the government studies, they were going, well, ivermectin doesn't achieve a high enough blood concentration to do anything for your immune system. But you're arguing it's not the blood we're talking about. We're talking about the gut.
we're talking about the gut. And what is ivermectin? Ivermectin is a fermented product of a microbe, Streptomyces, from the same family as Bifidobacteria, from the same phylum as Bifidobacteria. So in essence, it is a Bifidobacteria like, product. So I think, what it does is it really stimulates. I think it's a symbiotic bug to Bifidobacteria. And I think what happens is that's why I think you have to give it by mouth. You have to give it with a fatty meal so it gets absorbed. It goes to the colon, right? You saw that study from Gates with like an injection. It won't work
Mm.
as an
Yeah,
injection.
yeah,
It needs
exactly.
to go directly into the gut, right? So I think, I think that's the bottom line. And that's where the strength of ivermectin is. It really is at the gut level with the microbiome. So, and we saw it. I mean, I saw it in me initially when I took it. I had a respiratory virus at some point in December of 2020, not COVID. And, I said, you know what, let me try this ivermectin, right? I took it and then I showed my bifidobacteria went up. I'm like, wow, what happened there? So you know me, I'm like, let's see what ivermectin's doing. So I started calling all my doctor friends and my friends, and I said, I'm looking at ivermectin. If you're giving ivermectin, can I have stools before and after? And when I got the stools before and after, I started noticing increase in bifidobacteria, and with the improvement of the symptoms, but increase in bifidobacteria. But we tested a few patients like, day 2, day 3, it dropped back down. So it's not something that stays, it's something that drops.
It's while you're taking it, it's
Yeah.
benefiting you.
So here's the problem, which I haven't done too many patients. But the problem is, are you doing a yo-yo effect when you give it? So in other words, you give it every week, like once a week. Are you boosting the bifidobacteria, but then dropping? And then boosting, dropping, boosting, dropping. Is that a good thing to do to shake up that microbiome when it's trying to stabilize to grow properly, right? So I think, at some point, people have just got to wean off and kind of find a method to maintain their microbiome properly, and to sustain the bifidobacteria long term so that it does implant, right? So,
And it's also this idea, like people like on the low carb, they'll go, insulin's bad, so you don't want to have it. Well, you need insulin. You need to have a good level of insulin somehow,
yeah.
right? So are we looking at the same thing with the microbiome where you go, okay, Akkermansia, can you have too much, too little? Bifidobacterium, can you have too much bifidobacterium where it becomes an issue, where it knocks out the balance with everything else?
Okay, so bifidobacteria, I don't think you can have too much of bifidobacteria.
Okay.
Maybe, I don't know. But you look at newborns and they've got like, in the 90 percentile of bifidobacteria. I'm like, I want to go back to being a newborn. So, but is that 97% just a start to give them their immunity and then other
To protect
microbes
them,
come
yeah,
in
until they could
to
develop everything
protect them
else.
till they kind of like get that, right?
Wow.
So because you do see the progression, you see them like they're breastfeeding, they're getting a lot, they have a lot of bifidobacteria. And then after the progression, they start eating food, they start crawling on the floor, they're eating all sorts of things. And of course, their microbiome starts picking up, different microbes come in, decreasing that bifidobacteria, but kind of like recreating its own balance, right? Its own little ecosystem that we see in babies. So Akkermansia is an interesting bug. I think Akkermansia is the new bug of the century. Akkermansia, the jury's, I don't know yet. I'll tell you, I think it's bad for some, and I think it's good for some. I think it's bad if you have a certain level. I think it's good if you're at a certain level. I think the mistake that we're making is we're pushing it. There's a huge marketing ploy. You saw Haley Berry talking about it. Oh my God, it's the newest thing and increases metabolism, etc. How much of that is placebo? We have no idea. There's no real data on Akkermansia and the use of Akkermansia. And what is it even doing? What are the endpoints? When you do clinical research, you do these placebo-controlled trials to kind of give you an idea of, what the drug is doing, or the probiotic is doing, but also to kind of say, okay, well, this patient, there's endpoints, right? There's primary endpoint, secondary endpoint. What are we looking here? Are we looking at weight loss as one of those things that Akkermansia helps? Are we looking at energy? How are we monitoring the energy level of patients? You know what I mean? So there needs to be a lot of research on that. I think it is a mistake to just let these probiotics come out in a yogurt, because I think what's going to happen is the next company is going to say, oh, well, and by the way, I was in a meeting in France where I was at a conference on the microbiome, and people were talking about how do we bring these products to market, and they weren't too keen on the whole feces and fecal material, and especially in France, they're very cautious to move. They move slowly. And one of the things one guy said, who owned the company, he said, well, you don't really need to go through regulatory. You could just put it in a yogurt or food, and it goes as a supplement. So if you don't have the money to do a clinical trials and put it through the FDA, just bring it out as a supplement. And that's what they're doing. So you're going to start seeing a lot of people coming out with like these one probiotic, and I bet you the next one's probably going to be, I don't know, who knows?
Well, say
Um,
say someone takes a probiotic, like some people have taken the same probiotic for 20 years, right? 10 years, 5 years. So you go, okay, at least cycle it or try something different. Or what if people are feeling great? Do they even need
So,
it? Right?
yeah, so here's the thing, right? So, when your patients take laxatives and then for their constipation, and then they need the laxative. They can't stop. And then eventually they come to you and like, Dr. Lansky, I can't move my bowels and I'm taking like 5, 6 laxatives at night and it's not moving. And you're like, go to your GI doctor. And then the GI is like, look, the colonic inertia is there. The colon's not moving. It's time to chop off that colon, right? You've seen these cases, right?
Mhm.
Because these patients have made themselves in a habit of taking these laxatives, right? Is that what we're doing when we're taking probiotics? Are we stopping our own body from fermenting? Are we stopping, the colon, I like to think of it as a compost bin, right? You're putting your
Yeah.
green vegetables, you're putting your bacteria from like, rotten food that's in there. And that fermentation is occurring and it's mixing. And just like a compost, what is a compost? Green vegetables, foods that you were gonna throw. I mean, green grass, foods that you were gonna throw, mix it together for a week, and then you end up with this amazing black dirt, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
It's the same thing. Your poop is essentially that compost, right? That just happened where you're putting foods in your colon, but there's bacteria in there eating all that, right? So when you think of it that way, you go, okay, well, am I supposed to every time I put in like some acromantia, for example, I'm shocking my system. It never received it. Why am I shocking my system, right? It's like, it's like a pool full of like algae and you shock it with chlorine, but then the pool is beautiful, but then every week you decide I'm going to shock it with chlorine. There's no algae in there. What do you do to the pH of the pool? It's not really tolerable anymore. So I think it's the same thing with these probiotics. My concern is that patients get used to them and then their colons are not fermenting, are not working as well. And then when they stop, unfortunately, they need to go back on them because they've gotten their body used to. Everything you do, in my opinion, you get used to it. You start drinking 2 glasses of wine, your body's going to crave those 2 glasses of wine every night. You eat junk food, you're going to crave the junk food. You eat sugar, you're going to crave the sugar. You take vitamins, you're staying on vitamins. Your body's going to need to continue on vitamins. You take ivermectin, your body's going to keep needing ivermectin. You take pain pills, your body's going to need pain pills. Everything we put in our bodies, our microbiome gets used to it, adapts, and wants it. And unfortunately, that's how it happens.
Yeah, and so a lot of times it's whether it's addition or subtraction, right? So if you say, "Oh, I'm gonna quit smoking, quit drinking," those kind of things, that affects the gut microbiome also in a positive way, right?
Yes.
So, there's so much where people are drinking, a gallon of vodka at night, but they're taking their probiotics, and the more you're like, okay, right, this is
Doesn't
gonna be
matter.
yeah, you're
I tell this to my patients. I say you're putting gasoline on one hand and you're putting water to turn off the fire. You're never going to turn it off because there's gasoline still there. So yeah, I mean, either you do it the right way. And listen, I have a very strict regimen with my patients where, and my patients will call my secretary daily and say, uh, am I really supposed to remove this? Because I'll give you an example, lettuce. I'm not a fan of lettuce. So I remove lettuce from all my patients. And so everybody's like, what? Lettuce? I mean, obviously, I've studied this. I know what I'm doing. So, yes, I remove lettuce, but I tell them, I say, look, do what you can do. But if you start looking and analyzing all the foods that actually kill your bifidobacteria, why lettuce? Lettuce, believe it or not, it's very, very hard to find lettuce that has not had pesticides. And if you look at the
yeah.
farms, and I don't care if they say organic, I have a farm in my back in behind my office that is an organic farm, and they spray at 5 o'clock in the morning. The guys come in with their hazmat suits and everything, and it's disgusting. And the amount of pesticides they put, it's gallons. I mean, the truck is going and it's just dumping
Yeah,
So
people don't realize that effect, right?
no, and
Yeah.
you've got this beautiful lettuce that is crunchy and gorgeous, and now it's soaked with all these pesticides. And on the pesticide bottle, it says poison with the little skeleton, right?
Yeah.
But meanwhile, the lettuce is soaked with pesticide coming on your dish. Well, maybe we should put a little skeleton on the salad that has had the pesticides because that's just as bad. It's horrible. So anything green, anything above the ground, I don't trust it. You remember how there was a time where there was E. coli in strawberries? How does E. coli come into the strawberries? Only if there's,
People are
you've
going.
altered the soil and you've saturated those strawberries with a lot of pesticides. That's the only way. So, it's just the whole thing is all about the imbalance in the
So when you're talking
earth.
about protecting the BIF, how are we protecting it? How are we, is there things we can do and go, okay, these are going to protect it? Because, I mean, and I think this is an important thing. And it's so interesting talking to you because um, med school, I was in well, when you do pediatrics, everyone gets sick all the time, right? Kids give you everything in the world and you're
Yeah.
always sick. And everyone's like, oh, you're doing peds because you're sniffling in the corner, right? And always after finals, everyone gets sick, or after going through a major life
Yes.
stress, people get
Yes.
sick, right? So, and when you're talking about stress changes or there's an association of the gut microbiome and stress, right?
But have you noticed, like in med school, you never really get sick when you're taking the
Yeah,
finals.
not taking the
But
files
you're
after,
in
right
that,
after when you
it's
let down.
right after.
Yeah.
Because here's the problem. You're on that go, go, go. So you're in that stress mode, that your
Mhm.
microbiome's working hard. You're not letting it relax. And it's in a constant stress mode. As soon as you drop your stress level, bam, it comes to hit you because now you're relaxed. And that's when, viruses start flourishing. Exactly that's what happens. I think in my case, one of the reasons I probably, during the pandemic survived is I'm at a constant stress level, with pharma, regulatory patients, so I'm employees, everything. So I think it's always good to kind of stay at this level of stress. But here's my theory in life. If you're at this level of stress and then you drop your level to nothing, you're gonna get sick. If you're at this level of stress of very calm, passive, and then all of a sudden you get this enormous amount of stress, you're gonna get sick. So I think anytime you go from up to down or down to up, you're bound to get sick no matter what, because you're creating this turbulence
Yeah, she's
in
not
your
letting
system.
people annoy you. But what I find, I have a lot of people with continuous glucose monitors, and when they go on vacation, their sugars get better and they lose weight all the time, even if they're eating crappy stuff. In our opinion, you go, wait a minute, why is that? And Italy, I have all kinds of people go to Italy and they lose weight and their sugars look great, and they're eating pasta and pizza, and you're like, it's different too, though, right? Their
It's
food is
so
different,
different, so different.
and the
I
stress
go
level
to
has to have
France.
something to do with it.
I go to France. I eat a whole baguette. I don't gain a pound. I come back home and I've not gained a pound. I eat a little piece of bread here in
And you
America.
go to Olive
I
Garden and you
gain
gain 30 pounds in a
Oh
night,
my
right?
God. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's
Forget all
crazy how that
about it.
is.
Yeah, yeah. No. And actually, I think people gain more weight from eating the salad bars than eating a pizza, frankly. So, I think we overdo it with the salad dressing and all that. So
So
that's a problem. The
what do you
order.
see in menopausal women with gut microbiome and hormone changes? Do you see that? Do you see anything in that where when the hormones get replaced or they look at the
Yeah,
microbiome?
so we're starting to look at that. We don't have anything definitive, definite yet. We are working with an obstetrician, a couple of obstetricians actually on that. But it is fascinating. Even the hormones do affect the microbiome. You look at young girls that start the birth control pill, that even affects the microbiome. And I don't know if you've noticed in your practice, young girls that start the birth control pill and then start gaining weight, that's microbiome dysbiosis that's starting because of those hormones. And, unfortunately, you know, there's problems with everything. So
So how do we protect the BIF? We get rid of lettuce.
how
We
do you
don't drink so
protect?
much.
Okay, so the first thing is obviously, fermented food diet, right? So
Kimchi, sauerkraut.
kimchi, sauerkraut, I like to do preserved lemons. is really good. So I'll take my lemons, I'll put a lot of salt. In my book, Let's Talk Shit, there's a recipe of preserved lemon. So you cut the
I have it
lemon,
sitting right here.
salt, yeah, and you kind of press it, and then you let them kind of squeeze till they have the juice. And then I like to eat that, probably put it in water or have it in my tomato or avocado salad, or I'll put it on the fish, or I'll put it in beets. I'm very big in beets. Anything that's underground, carrots, beets. I like spices. I like the cumin. I like the curcumin. I like the turmeric. All those spices are really good for you. They're anti-inflammatory. So probably they do increase the BIF. I've not looked at that, but we are going to look at that. Tangine, I'm Moroccan, so I do a lot of tangine. So I'll do the chicken and I'll cook it for like hours in a tangine, and I'll put a lot of, I have a beehive in my backyard, so we have our natural honey. Honey is the poop of the bee, right? And what's in honey? Bifidobacteria and lactobacillus. So when you're eating, and by the way, a little secret, don't use the honey with a silver spoon. Use it with a wooden spoon. So when you have a wooden, so honey in the morning is a good habit to take.
So that's
You know,
let me stop you on that just for a second, because in the carnivore community,
yes,
there's factions, right? So some people are like, you have to eat the organ meat. Some people are like, you have to add some honey, some berries, some form of fiber in with that. Other people are like, no, you just eat meat, that's it. So it's interesting. So some of these people may have dysbiosis, and when they add in a little honey, they feel great and it helps them.
yes, yes. And actually, if you look at tribes in Africa, in Center Africa, they'll eat the whole zebra raw, right? And they'll touch their kids with the blood of the zebra. And then afterwards, they take the beehive and they'll start eating all the honey from the tree, because that's their balance, right? So that's how they survive. But essentially, they are carnivore, and those people don't have heart disease or diabetes or anything like that. But I always say, it's the whole carnivore diet is interesting. I think it is specific to some people. Some people cannot tolerate the meat, and that's okay, because that's just how different we are as human beings, right? You look at people in Japan that are used to eating, the sushi and the raw fish, etc. You go to China, where they have a completely different diet, very big in the squid and all those, and pork and all that, and chicken and all that, right? So there's a different diet for really every culture. And I think it's when you deviate from that diet. 30 years being a gastroenterologist, one of my biggest thing that I've always noticed is the people that deviate from their diet, right? The guy that all of a sudden starts eating multi-grain bread because somebody told him it was good for him. And then next thing you know, comes in and he's got celiac fruit, right? Can't eat bread anymore. It's the Mexican that starts eating sushi. He's not used to sushi. He's corn tortilla and rice and beans. All of a sudden he's eating sushi. He's getting a parasite. He's not used to that, right? Vice versa, the Japanese that's eating Mexican food, not used to the beans, not used to the corn, all that. So I think the cultures and how you were fed plays a role with that. So how do you maintain your bifidobacteria? How do you maintain, your bifidobacteria? Your microbiome is really, looking back at what your family ate, what your family eats, what your comfort food is. If something is upsetting you, like lima beans, for me, I cannot eat them. I put a heating pad on my belly after eating them. So I'm never going to touch them, because obviously that's telling my body I don't have what it takes to digest that. So I'm not going to touch it. People that are lacking certain microbes are not going to be able to drink milk. It's just a fact. They killed those microbes. Therefore, they can't absorb the calcium from the milks. They can't drink the milk. So they get bloated, they get gassy. So if you know that certain foods are affecting you, then you're going to avoid them, right? And if you avoid them, then essentially you're on the right path. I think the people that don't have any GI symptoms are probably doing great. Just keep at it, right? Why change what's working, especially those who haven't gotten COVID? stick to whatever you're doing, because clearly whatever you're doing
Yeah.
is amazing, right?
Yeah. Or
I
you
mean,
have
and we
pre-existing
see,
immunity, right?
yeah, I don't change. I think it's the changing, right? It's changing your, how I'm going to start drinking tequila. I'm going to start drinking. Anytime you change anything, it's interesting. I was listening to an episode of Donald Trump saying that he doesn't drink alcohol. Now, that's one microbiome I'd like to look at because he survived COVID, right? So you wonder if he's got some good bifidobacteria in there because
But
he's
he
never.
also got the standard. He got the
Oh, he
Cadillac.
got
He
everything.
got
He
he
got
got everything thrown at
he
him when
got
he had his
everything.
his right.
Monoclonal antibody, hydroxychloroquine, Z-Pack,
Yeah,
everything.
he took it all. He took it
Yeah.
all too, right? But yeah, but just think of what his tweets would be like if he was drinking.
Well, and yeah, I know. I
That
don't
would have
think
been some good entertainment right there, right?
well, then that would have been a bad situation. Yeah.
So, how about raw milk? A lot of people swear by raw milk now.
Raw milk, I'm cautious about it because
Okay.
if you trust the farm, if you know they have good sanitary practices, they're watching, the mammary glands of the animals, and there's no infections or anything like that. Great, but I had a kid that started drinking from raw milk, and then next thing you know starts coming in with like rectal bleed and a GI
Yeah,
bleed, so
issues.
he got
Yeah.
some kind of parasite in him that was in the raw milk. That's why they want to pasteurize, right? So I think if you trust your farm, if the farm is good, has good practices, there's a lot of farms out there that are doing it great. Regenerative farming is the way to go. You look at Polyface Farm and Joel Salatin with his diversity of animals, diversity of plants, sterile environment as much as possible. That's the way to go. I mean,
And rotating the crops and rotating the
yeah,
animals and all
rotating
that
the
stuff. So it's not
crop.
this
Yeah,
standard.
that's the way to go. And really, that's the way we should all be. That's what we should be eating. That's what we should be aiming for. That's what all the farms should be.
Yeah, I'm
And
gonna do a little. I'm curious because I'm gonna do a little experiment. I'm going back to Guatemala in a couple months, and there's doctors who swear that a lot of these guys were malnourished as kids, and they swear that if you give these guys whole milk or raw milk, that their sugars improve. I'm like, there's sugar in the milk, like it should raise their sugar. They go, it gets way better. Like, trust us, we're telling you.
well, actually, let me just tell you, milk, sugar stimulates bifidobacteria. I know it's going to come as a shock, but think about again the bee. The bee's microbiome is bifidobacteria lactobacillus, right? In the rectum of the bee is lactobacillus and bifidobacteria. What does the bee feed on? Sugar and water. I mean, in winter to feed my bees, I basically put a tray of water and sugar and some hay so they don't drown. And they basically are feeding on sugar and water. That's how I get this amazing, honey. So I think sugar is needed. The problem is if you're missing microbes, you're not able to absorb sugar. And that's what happens to all these kids. So if you start giving them raw milk, good milk, that's, whole milk. And by the way, whole milk. I'm not into the whole, and there's something to be said about you know, the regular milk that's raw because there's the growth hormones are in there. There's all the nutrients, the immunoglobulins are in there. You haven't really killed all that, right? So there is something to be said about that. And I can see why those kids are thriving because you are stimulating the ability for them to get bifidobacteria. So
How about colostrum? A lot of people are talking about that right now.
colostrum is great. If you can find good colostrum that you trust and that's not contaminated and pure, yes,
So
100%.
how
But
did
it's also vitamin C, D, and zinc, right? So remember at the beginning of the pandemic, all my protocols had vitamin C, D, and zinc. Vitamin C, D, and zinc is great. Vitamin C and D increase bifidobacteria. Zinc increases lactobacillus and firmicutes. So this is great in combination because you're basically boosting your immunity with those three. But here's the thing. If you're putting a capsule of, whatever that's not vegetable, organic capsule, and that capsule has like some, product in there that kills the bifidobacteria, That doesn't help you. That is vitamin C and D. Here's the other thing. A lot of vitamins are out there are contaminated. I started making, people are like, well, why did you start making a vitamin? First of all, I needed a vitamin for my clinical trials, right? So I started this whole Biome Boosters, right? And I called it Biome Boosters I called it Biome Boosters before they called the shot the booster. And now, as a joke, I say the only booster you ever need is a Biome Booster.
And you
Because,
sell it? Do you sell it?
yeah, well, we sell it on a website
Well,
because,
tell people where it's at because my patients are going to bug the heck
oh,
out of
yeah,
me.
yeah, biomeboosters.com.
Okay.
So the vitamin C, D, and zinc, it's a one pill combination. It's amazing. It's pure vitamin C, D, and zinc made in Florida. We test it on the microbiome. I'm the guinea pig. My staff's the guinea pig. We test it, on a monthly basis. So even because we want to make sure there's no arsenic in there, there's no byproducts that are messing it up, that it's really pure vitamin C, D, and zinc, and a vegetable capsule.
And would that
Um,
be good after like taking back antibiotics?
Yeah, and also
No.
take it with a meal. Always take it with a meal. For those people who can't tolerate zinc, because it can be a little bit, we put a little bit of fat, like cellulose, in there to kind of make it absorbable. But for some people who can't do it, we do vitamin C and D so like, let's say you have that sore throat, you've been exposed to a party or whatever. You pump up vitamin C and D combination pill. You take like 3 or 4 of them. Ask your doctor because of, obviously kidney, etc. You don't want to, although vitamin D, you can't really overdo it with vitamin D. Most people are really low in vitamin D. Here's the
And that
thing.
was a big correlation with dying, and yeah, I
Yeah, and
felt it
here's
too.
the thing. We would not need extra vitamin C and vitamin D if our foods had vitamin C and vitamin D and were not full of junk and manipulated, right? But the fact is, even an orange now, you taste an orange, it doesn't even taste like an orange. Is there even vitamin C in that orange, right? So, yeah, so I started clinical trials and I basically needed a vitamin. So I called the pharmacist in Beverly Hills and I said, I need a vitamin that's a one pill combination. Who do you know? And he connected me with this factory in Florida who basically made it for me. And so when the clinical trials finished, everybody was loving my vitamins because they weren't getting sick. So they basically called me and they're like, how can we get that? So we said, well, let's put it on a website. So we called it biomeboosters.com. And basically all the proceeds go to donations for my research. And then essentially all these vitamins are, we continue following these patients. So your patients essentially become part of my research because we basically email like every couple months and say, don't forget to contact your doctor, check your vitamin D level, your copper level, your zinc level. For those people who are low in copper because they overdid it or they were taking it for like a year and they dropped. So copper, you need a little bit of copper. So there's a selenium and copper. You don't need much selenium, much copper. It's really, 1 to 2 pills every month, if that, because really we get a lot. So copper, selenium, I don't really, not too much of. So vitamin C, vitamin D, zinc, bovine immunoglobulins, blood from the cows. We did our study that showed that it actually increased the bifidobacteria. An amazing product for people that are, not wanting to eat the meat. We have the blood that's basically spun and we take the clear liquid. That's your immunoglobulin. So whoever's missing, that those immunoglobulins in their blood and low in bifidobacteria because they've gone completely vegan, that's a great product for them, especially if they're like chronic fatigue syndrome, etc. So we're testing all that obviously to see, is there any benefits to, we've seen with bovine immunoglobulins, it's great at binding E. coli and proteobacteria and C. diff. And it's great for irritable bowel syndrome. Crohn's patients have done it well for nutritional support. So, we wrote the paper. We showed that it increased the bifidobacteria, dropped the proteobacteria. Those are the products that I basically support
Wow.
because I do the research,
How
and
about
drops the bacteroides and increases diversity. Bovine immunoglobulins increases diversity, which is amazing.
Wow. This is new to me. See, I'm glad I had you on. I was
By the way,
already.
if you're ever like in an area and you have like a sore throat, that's where the virus is like, that's just a little caveat, something that happens. Some of my patients tell me they've done this. It's not research. We've not done any research, but a lot of my patients will tell me as soon as they get the sore throat, they'll gargle with the bovine and then they'll drink it, and then the next day the sore throat is gone. So it does bind to viruses supposedly. So, we're testing it.
How about gut lining? Like people who are stressed all the time, their gut lining. 'Cause, the other thing that I just want to, and I'm not going to keep you all night, I promise. But if I got you, I'm gonna like ask you a few things
Yes,
here.
ask me a
But
question.
the uh, like people get like, for instance, autoimmune diseases, huge correlation with major stress before they get these autoimmune diseases.
Yes.
So the logic is it's got to destroy the gut lining or the leaky gut, all these kind of things when people are inflamed
It,
all the time.
it's the same as Crohn's disease, right? So
Hmm.
the whole leaky gut is all Crohn's disease. I think eventually we're going to find out all these diseases are really extraintestinal manifestations of Crohn's. You look at autistic children, and autism, is very similar to inflammatory bowel disease. When you look at the microbes, especially of kids with autism, you start noticing there's a lot of microbes that are very similar to what we find in Crohn's. There's a lot of studies out there that actually took biopsies of kids with with autism and found inflammatory changes in the colon concomitant with Crohn's disease for these kids. And actually, there's a lot of clinical trials that are going to be coming out where those kids are going to be put on biologics and monoclonal antibodies. And that's actually helping these kids. So there's autism, we're going to find out, is a microbiome dysbiosis, is similar to Crohn's disease, or is a neurological problem, or a genetic problem, or a connection between the brain and the gut. So I think autism is like taking some shape with the research that's being done. And certainly I'm on the forefront of that. So I don't like to think of autism as just a gut dysbiosis, but when you look at autism and you look at the inflammatory changes in the colon, you could see how inflammation of the colon, can cause all this. And one of the key features of autism is loss of bifidobacteria. So
And there's certain patterns you can look at, like dementia, Parkinson's disease, the gut microbiome, and
Alzheimer's,
yeah,
yes.
it's just amazing, like how much we're gonna say. Oh gosh, maybe this person better. I know you told some great stories about that.
I had two amazing cases. I had two patients that came from a geneticist who basically, did their diagnosis, and I didn't know about the diagnosis. And the patients came to see me for constipation, right? And I look at their microbiome and I see like a signature microbiome. So I deal with a lot of Parkinson's, and I've been analyzing the microbiome of Parkinson's. And I said to the patients, I said, so you're constipated, but I see a signature of Parkinson's here. Do you have any tremors? And both of them said to me, no, but my father or mother has Parkinson's. And I'm like, wow. And it's amazing because when so we corrected. So when I called the geneticist, she said, yeah, we found a genetic sequence, a genetic marker also that was for Parkinson's in these patients. So here's the crazy thing is I actually readjusted their microbiome, nothing that I can discuss right now because it's all caveat and
Mm-hmm.
N of two. And the constipation disappeared, and these patients are doing great. But here's my thought. Did I prevent Parkinson's in
Yeah,
those,
that's the yeah. Hopefully,
right?
we never have to know, right? They never
We'll
get it.
never have to know. But
Yeah, it's
here's two cases.
crazy.
And here's the other thing, right? I have a patient. Her mother had kidney cancer. Okay, and has a certain signature microbiome for kidney cancer. Okay, that I actually saw in other patients with kidney cancer. Well, it turns out the daughter has this signature microbiome. But here's the crazy thing: the grandchild, who's 2 years old, is starting to have that signature microbiome, right? So what did I do? I'm decreasing those microbes because I don't want them to grow into maybe if they're possibly, kidney cancer in 40 years, have I changed the path of the disease, right? So that's the amazing thing about the research is really, am I changing the path of the disease when I manipulate the microbiome early? And this is the direction I want doctors to go in, right? To understand these microbes, to see, to get an assay going, to say, okay, well, Dr. Hazen, you saw, we have right now a signature microbiome on 42 patients with Parkinson's, okay? And it's pretty similar. I mean, like, it's pretty similar, those microbes, right? And I have to say, imagine if we have 1,000 like that. And now we have a signature microbiome. And we could say, you are going to have Parkinson's because you've got these microbes. And here's how we're going to do an animal. By the way, I'm trying to raise $1 million to do this animal study. So please put microbiomeresearchfoundation.org for people to support. Please, please, please.
Yeah, we'll put links to all this stuff too, so
Yeah,
people can
so
track
it's
you
a
down.
$1 million study it's an animal study. We found these microbes. We want to put them in mice, and we wrote the protocol to do an animal model to reproduce Parkinson's in mice. Then we're going to give the right microbiome to the mice to see if we correct the Parkinson's. That's the first animal study on Parkinson's. This would be huge. I'm also working, by the way, with Dr. Duda at Johns Hopkins, where he's doing a Parkinson's study. So we need to raise funds for his study because he's doing fecal transplant. So our lab is going to be analyzing the microbiome before and after.
We have to figure out how to get you more passionate about this stuff. You got to come out of your shell at some point, right? What are you going to do with it?
This is epic, right? This is incredible. I mean, imagine why I went into this is because I said, what if I'm the girl that's going to have Parkinson's? I want to fix it. I want to know. I don't want to be on my bed or in my wheelchair and say I coulda, shoulda, woulda. I had a pediatrician that had Parkinson's, completely debilitated. Poor guy passed away during COVID. He broke my heart. I mean, this was me. They could have been me. So, and he would have done anything. And he was so thankful that I even paid attention to him. So that's why I'm passionate. But it's not easy, because what happens is people come in with Parkinson's and they're like, Dr. Hazen, fix me. And I'm like, I can't. And they're like, I'll pay whatever.
Yeah.
I don't care. It needs to go through regulatory. And here's my other crazy thing, which is people are like, well, fix me first and then don't worry about the money. The money will come, right? And I'm like, if I fix one, it's the same cost as fixing 100, because I need a regulatory girl. I need a coordinator. I need a monitor. I need so much. So if I'm fixing one, I might as well fix 100. And I'm not going to do it for one, because here's the problem. If I don't have the FDA in my office and I screw up on the one, bye-bye, Dr. Hazen.
You're done.
That's all the FDA is waiting for, is to see me fail. So I'm not going to let them. I don't want to do that. So,
well, and you're actually doing research on animals first and not humans. So that's a good step in the right direction, I think.
Yeah, as opposed to some, I did a Zoom, a podcast with someone who will remain nameless. And he said to me, oh, I have a great idea. We're going to do carbon monoxide infusion in the colon in patients, and it's going to fix them. And I'm like, and you are planning to do animal studies first on that, right? And he goes, yeah. No animal studies. We're just going to do it.
Yeah, just do it. Just go for it. Yeah, you're like, yeah, I know. It's amazing how people get these ideas,
I'm like, oh my God, like, how did you, this is why I like to work with the FDA, because I can come up with a crazy idea like that, and then they'll snap me out of it and say, Dr. Hazen, you didn't think about this, and that. So
yeah, there's consequences to everything we do, right? Like, we're learning that.
To work with the regulatory, but they're there to protect you. They're there to protect the patient. But the problem is the FDA has gone like completely the other way now. There was a time the FDA was completely perfectly legit. But now when they're starting to approve clinical trials with no consent.
No informed consent. You're like, what? Like,
I mean, should we go back to the 300 clinical trials?
We've lost our minds. It's incredible, especially we want to get the public trust, so we're not going to do informed consent. We're just going to try stuff on you. Like, it's incredible. Then
you might as well let the naturopath try stuff on you. I mean, what's the difference, right?
Yeah, it's wild. It's wild.
So on one hand, we want placebo-controlled trial during COVID on hydroxy-Z-Pak and vitamin C, D, and zinc, or ivermectin, doxycycline, which are perfectly safe. We want a placebo-controlled trial when people are dying, right?
But we did 6 feet apart with no data, and
Yeah, yeah,
everyone did
yeah.
it.
But
We had circles everywhere.
on the other
Don't get
hand,
us started. We're gonna get worked up.
I know,
It's
and
not
it's
good
gonna
for our
kill our
bifidobacteria, and we're gonna kill it all off right now. So let me just ask you two quick ones. Apple cider vinegar, do you think it's beneficial for the gut microbiome?
Okay, so that data is coming. Depends on the microbiome. If you have a certain signature microbiome, it does help. Um, that's all I'm gonna say.
All right.
But
All
yes,
right.
the right
Uh,
apple cider vinegar,
how
not the one
about
bought
how
by
about
Bill Gates.
how about protecting the mucus layer of the colon? Is there any that we said we mentioned colostrum and some of the other things, but is there anything that you go, okay, like bone broth or different things of
Yes, bone broth is
collagens?
amazing. Bone broth is great. Again, spices. Again, your
So if you make
your
the gut microbiome healthy, you're gonna preserve the mucus layer,
yes, yes.
right?
When you go a little bit off, with the, you're overdoing it with alcohol, you're overdoing it with, raw meat that's, has a lot of antibiotic, where the meat was given a lot of antibiotics, a lot of hormones, that's probably not good for you. So I think everything, you got to be careful. You got to be a smart consumer. Here's the other thing that's the most important is not overdoing it on all those nutraceuticals. We are sold so much crap out there, and every day I hear this. For example, the whole, there's just so much, alpha linoleic acid and, all these products, but do those products really have that in the product, right? When you look at, the study where I had 26 products at the grocery store that I picked up to see if there was bifidobacteria in them. Only 3 of them had them. So the label mislead. A lot of labels are misleading the consumer. When you look at the probiotics industry, 16 out of 17 probiotics don't even have what it says on the label. There's no supervision for that. It's incredible. I'm not a person that likes to shop at big stores. Okay. I'm not, because the problem is with those big stores, you buy your yogurt over there. You don't know. They could have left them over the counter for like 24 hours and then put them in the fridge. Right. So I think you got to be find a farm, find a local store that you trust, that has quality, that has
Mhm.
some kind of, you know, um, you know, cleanliness in the process of selling all these vegetables. Farmers market, get to know your farmers market, your farmers, etc.
You could pay them a little more now or pay us a lot more later. You could choose,
Well,
right?
it's amazing to me. People will spend thousands of dollars on a, Taylor Swift concert, and then they won't spend any money on their health. I mean, you know what? Give me the fresh fruits and vegetable from a farm rather than a concert where everybody is like a petri dish full of microbes. No, thank you.
Well, I'm just looking for the day. I'm just gonna send you a bunch of stool and go, what do just fix them, and I could go stay
Oh,
at
no.
home and go here, just take this and this. Here you go, have
You know
fun.
what I'm
You'll be
looking for
healthy.
the day? I'm looking for the day where you send me the stools and you say, Sabine, what does this person have? And then I can guess their
Well,
disease.
I'm telling you, that's it.
Let's
I've
do
seen
that.
that before where people says,
Yeah.
"Oh, I'll try to trick you."
Send me the stools. Don't tell me what
All
they
these
have.
people are gonna start mailing me stuff in
And
the
then
mail.
I'll
Going,
tell you what they have. My favorite is
that
when I
will be fun. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, so
And
because of this signature microbiome that's come out with anxiety, a lot of patients, I'll look at their microbiome and I'll say, so are you anxious, foggy brain, not able to sleep? And they'll say, how do you know that? I'm like, I can see it in your
yeah,
microbiome.
it's crazy. It's like you're a fortune teller, right? It's
It's
crazy. I've
crazy.
seen
It's
stuff like that where
crazy.
they go, "This guy's morbidly obese and he's got this and this and Parkinson's," and they're like, "Does he's has Parkinson's, not obese?" And they're like, "Really? He has the microbiome of an obese person." Well, oh, he's a long distance runner. Oh, okay,
Wow.
right.
But
So
here's the thing. Here's the crazy thing for you. It's as a physician doing a physical exam, you can already tell the history of the patient, right? How many patients
yeah,
will you see? You'll do a physical exam and you'll say, oh, look at that. This patient, I bet you has a lung cancer in the upper lobe because you examined the pulse and you saw obliteration of the pulse, when you elevated the hand. So you're like, oh my God, maybe there's a tumor there
yeah,
in the lung,
yeah.
right? So, we know from physical exam what our patients have. This is just taking the physical exam a little bit deeper to the analysis of the microbiome. But here's a crazy thing. The smell of microbes, every microbe has different smells too. Think about the Parkinson's patients, right? They have a smell, they exude a smell. So it's a fascinating, COVID, there was a specific smell to COVID. There's a specific smell to C. diff.
Oh
My,
yeah.
I remember
Oh
when
yeah.
patients would come to my office with C. diff, I didn't even need to do a stool sample on them. I'd be like, yeah, you have C. diff. I already know. And how do you know? You have that smell. So
Yeah, it's wild.
you see enough patients, especially in my case, I analyze the stools. It's not pleasant. Somebody's got to do it. But you become aware. It becomes like, your expertise at diagnosis and at diagnosing, and that's what it's all about.
Yeah, it's amazing. You're doing great stuff. And so I'll bug you
And
some
then
more with some
decrease
patients.
stress, of course, love your family,
Get your sleep, be nice to
more
people.
love, more laughter.
Yeah.
Is it the laughter that increases the bifidobacteria, or is it, you're laughing to increase your bifidobacteria? It doesn't matter. The bottom line is laugh more, love more, decrease stress, turn off the television, all those
Play
channels,
in
they
the dirt, go out and have
play in
fun,
the
enjoy your
dirt,
life.
all
Don't
like
worry about everything.
I have a farmer, by the way, for your patients. I have a farmer who basically, Matt Clofer, Harmony Hills Farms, who basically has a little shed. He created like a little shack, a couple of little shacks on his farm. And I send him my worst patients, my Malibu celebrities that are like so, their gut is destroyed because they've overdone it. They needed to be skinny for this
They've
movie.
lived their lives. Yeah.
But then they needed to be fat for this movie, so they've abused their
Yeah.
bodies to fit the part, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I need to fix them. So I send them to this guy, and he basically puts them in this little, shack and feeds them, raw milk. And I trust his milk, feeds them vegetables, makes them like shovel the dirt of the cows, play with the breast milk, and they start getting better. And to me, that's the
That's
ultimate
unbelievable. Yeah.
refloralization process.
Yeah. And you're grounding and you're outside, you're having fun and
And
enjoying life and you're
he
learning
makes
more
them
stuff. And
walk, he makes them go on the grass, he makes
do
them
they
like,
go there and stay there for like
yeah,
a
they go
retreat?
stay there for about a week or two. Yeah,
Wow. That's
yeah.
amazing. See, stuff like
So,
that. See?
so I killed their microbiome. Like I basically I remove the biofilm, do a cleansing and all that. I give them, vancomycin to kill off everything because God knows they've destroyed everything. And, especially when I see mostly like bad microbes in there. And then I send it to him, and then I go, okay, reset, and then they come
Wow.
back. Yeah. So short of doing,
That's
GI
amazing. That's like instead of
manipulation.
a fecal transplant, you go have fun for a week and
Well,
collect cows.
that's to me, that's the art of refloralization, right? Without having to do fecal transplant.
So it's
You
almost like it's almost like you're doing a bone marrow transplant, like you're irradiating all of their
are irradiating
bone
everything,
marrow and you give them the
killing
fresh
the
stuff. And
biofilm,
wow.
and then you basically start
So
them.
some people are that bad that you can't just say add this, here, go do this. You have to like wipe out the all the bad stuff they got.
Oh, some people have a horrible. Think about the people. By the
Oh
way,
my
one very important
gosh.
thing: methylene blue. So this one doctor was like big on methylene blue, and he said,
A
"Well, it's
lot, a
easier."
lot. I've been asking people about it. I don't know anything about it.
So the animal studies were great for animals. It
Yeah.
doesn't produce in humans. Okay,
Okay.
methylene blue we use in GI to tattoo the colon so we can
Yeah.
find the polyp. Okay,
Yeah.
so it never leaves the colon; it's always there. So imagine you're swallowing little by little some methylene blue. Anyways, it kills the bifidobacteria. Stay away from
Oh,
it.
thank you. That's good to know.
Welcome.
I'll tell people that
Yes.
too. I have
Yes.
to ask you,
I
what's
mean,
the
they feel good, but here's the thing, okay? It's like ozone therapy, methylene blue, all that, they feel great because they're in a sterile environment. But the problem is, again, they go back outside, they're exposed to bad microbes, they can't live. So you could stay sterile, you could kill off everything. So, like, let's say you've got parasites, infections, etc. Yes, do your ozone therapy, clean off everything. But then you need to refloralize. Refloralization is good vitamins, good bovine, back to nature, back to the farm. Go drink your milk. Go, restore your gut microbiome. without the need necessarily of probiotics, because unfortunately too many probiotics are bad. But for those people who have zero BIF, cannot go to the farm, cannot do all that, then we have to start them on probiotics. And then if those probiotics do not implant or do not stay, and we monitor their stools to see if the bifidobacteria is increasing or not, those people, we basically have to start considering doing other therapeutics.
Crazy stuff. Amazing.
It's
There's no
complex.
science to this at all, though, right? I was told there's no science to the microbiome.
There's no science.
It's all hocus
None,
pocus
none
stuff.
whatsoever.
Wow.
Just
But we just don't,
bacteria dead, and then it comes back again.
we just don't understand enough.
Better.
So I have to ask you, what's life's best medicine for you now? And you don't have to say the same thing you said last time I dragged you on. So where are you at now? Where's your, like, where do you go to when things are hard? What keeps you motivated and going and smiling and laughing?
Well, right now I'll tell you. I mean, I'm at the calm, so I'm a little bit anxious with the calm because I feel you probably have the same yourself, right? Where you know something big is gonna happen. You know the politicians are gonna like do something epic in May to just keep you in that constant stress level so that they can make you sick and then sell drugs and all sorts of things. So I'm anxious about that, right? Like it's coming. I feel it. So my staff was like, "Are you okay, Dr. Hazen? You're like snapping because it's the beginning of the year and all these pressures." And I'm like, "No, I feel something's coming. I just
the calm before the storm, and you're like,
yeah,
oh, here it comes."
It's like before COVID, by the way, I dreamt of 1,000 crows. I kept dreaming of crows. I was dreaming of like dead people, really. And I knew it was coming. Like I could feel it.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Same thing here. Like it's something about the election year that just makes me sick. I don't know if you're the same, but that
Well, you just know what BS is coming. You can't, like, I
but
take
it's
it as
also like it makes me sick to my stomach, like that whole division and that whole anger and that whole like, oh my God, like trying to divide us and the woman and the XX versus XY. And oh my God, it's just too much. It's too much, you know.
Well, that's not life's best medicine. You're just saying crap's coming and you're getting ready.
Crap's coming.
You're just gonna
life's best medicine. Well, life's best medicine.
You're saying even if the crap comes, we're gonna get through it and be okay at the other end. We just have to go through this stupid stuff to get there, right?
Life's best medicine: laughter, love, honey. That's it.
All right, that's it. I'll take it.
Laughter, love,
or any combination thereof, right?
Any combination.
All right, that's good. That's good advice, right? Enjoy yourself and laugh a little bit.
Yes, yes.
Sabine, thank you so much. I knew it was gonna be awesome. Thank you, everyone. Like, this doctor is so dedicated. She was playing cards with her husband, and we decided to do this tonight rather than tomorrow morning because we both have a crazy schedule. So she gave up card games, and I'm not going to say who was winning, but she gave up card games for you to talk about this and save you and get your gut right and all that stuff. And mark my words, her area of medicine is it is the cutting edge. And we're going to all sit back and go, oh gosh, I wish I knew this 10 years ago or 15. Like, you know, we don't have to wait till we get all these bad diseases. We can start dealing now, and lifestyle stress, all these things we're focusing on. We're not just nutty making up stuff here. So Sabine, thank you so much. Go back to your husband. Pleasure. Go beat him at cards. And,
yes, thank you. Thank you, Brian.
Thanks for joining
me. Great talking to you.
Everyone, be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and think about these things. Really, life's too short. You could be grumpy and miserable your whole life, or you can go out and collect poop everywhere like Sabine does for a hobby.
Hey, so. You know what it keeps it fun.
So. But that's going to save the world. So
there everyone, you go.
Thanks again.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you for listening to this episode. We greatly appreciate your support. We would greatly appreciate a positive thumbs up on all of the platforms like iTunes and Spotify or wherever you're listening. And we just thank you for our Patreon supporters. We greatly appreciate your help in getting this message out. We think there's a lot of important information. And hopefully this helps you. Have a great day, and thank you for listening, and thank you for your support.